Oh, we lost DeLuca. There he goes.
Claudia, I remembered to copy you this time on my memo.
Yes, I noticed.
25 people, a couple minutes after 7:30, recording has started. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December 15th Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting. I ask that everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, please be seated. All right, so again, good evening. Welcome to the December 15th Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting. Last one for 2021. Has the board had a chance to review the minutes of the November 17th minute as distributed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll offer a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make.
Second by Tommy. Any questions?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Has the board had a chance to review the minutes from the December 1st meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I'll offer a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Second by Evan. Any questions?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Get right into our agenda this evening. First item on the agenda is a public hearing for Woodbury Shops in Woodbury Center. Public hearing for site plan special permit and ARB for proposed conversion of a large retail space, formerly Modell's, internally subdivided into multiple boutique stores. Said property is located at 23 Center Drive in Central Valley and is known as the Village of Woodbury tax map, section 225, block 2, lot 1.1.2. This was noticed in the paper on Friday, December 10th. Okay. Jason, are you speaking for the team tonight?
Yes, I will be. Yes.
Okay. Just real quick refresher of what you guys are here for, what the project's about, and then we'll get into it.
Absolutely. So the description was very good. Basically, we have the existing Modell's store. We're going to subdivide it internally just into smaller boutique stores. There is no additional square footage. It's currently about 19,000 square feet. The only exterior improvements are really two separate items. In the front of the building, we're adding one window to the right of the existing door, but the entryway will remain the same. And then at the rear of the building, we're adding a series of egress stairs for not only the public as a secondary means of egress, but also for the tenants in those spaces.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Jonathan, we'll get right into your memo.
Sure. You have a memo from Nelson Pope Voorhees dated December 9th. In it, we noted that at the beginning that many of our previous comments have been resolved. The application materials were updated. The new window details were added to sheet A903. The bulk regulation table has been added to sheet C2. On the landscaping plan, we noted that the previous tenant never had provided a 5-foot landscaping bed along the foundation or the front wall, bottom of the front wall of the building. And they're asking for that to be waived. Lighting, no exterior lighting is proposed. On the signs, there's still an open issue as to whether they meet the 10% of wall area, whether that's been exceeded by the proposed sign. Their sheet indicates that their signage is about 65 square feet, 64 square feet, and the uninterrupted facade portion that's shown on sheet A301 is 640 square feet in area. So, oh, I mean, 64 feet is, I'm sorry. 64 feet is what would be allowed if you use that uninterrupted facade area of 640 square feet. So that should be discussed. And there's really the only pertinent comments. Comments 8 is really just that you need to go over your standard architectural review board findings.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for Jonathan? No. Okay, Natalie?
Okay, I'll jump right into it if that's all right. The
Yep.
applicant's last submission showed stairwells exiting the rear of the building on the floor plans, but they weren't included on the site plan. They've since revised their plans to show the stairwells, but we noted that there seems to be some discrepancies among where they are located and also the size of the stairwells that need to be clarified. Additionally, there appear to be conflicts with the existing utilities, including the electrical power boxes and the meters. And the transformer pad that we think need to be addressed. We've asked the applicant to confirm the roof leader locations on the plans and show consistencies among the documents submitted, including the elevations. Based on correspondence received electronically, we believe the fire department has requested that their connection be relocated. And upon a review of this current submission, we know one of the stairwells is basically directly in front of that location. So we anticipate the applicant will comply with that request. The applicant is now showing a rescue area at the egress of the exit that connects to the main corridor within the building space. We understand that that's permitted by the building code, but we're recommending that as part of your action, the details be confirmed by the building department. And that'll be during the building permit process. The applicant has advised that the proposed rooftop equipment will be screened by the existing parapet. So we recommend that you consider whether or not that's enough information for you to evaluate what the code requires at this time. And if you do choose to kind of go with that, understanding that it's going to be screened by the parapet, we think that it would be appropriate for you to include a condition of your action that allows that to be observed during construction, such as roof-mounted equipment cannot be visible from the parking area or some other designated area in the center that you think is appropriate. We've carried forward some recommendations for conditions as part of the your special permit action if you choose to act on this application, which we recommend that you review in case you have any questions, pending a draft resolution is authorized this evening. And lastly, we also recommend that the applicant be resent to the ambulance corps. We haven't received any comments back from them on this application, and perhaps they have none, but we think that this would be of interest to them. And one other thing I wanted to comment on, just following Jonathan's memo and discussion about signage, is we did get an opinion from Mike on the proposed sign as it is shown on the plans, and he's confirmed that it's complying with the code. And
Great.
that's-
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody have questions for Natalie?
Natalie, just one question. Would you mind clarifying the that conflict regarding the transformer pads, the meters?
Yeah, I had it up on the screen here. I have a bunch of questions around that too. This is the back of the building now.
Yeah.
So this is where they're proposing those two staircases. So I have the same question Evan does, but I also have an additional question: is these staircases or these doors are now this is a double door and this has a staircase, but the existing elevations back here are on grade. So is the inside going to be elevated?
Yeah, so
Okay.
there is,
Oh,
that.
go ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Would you
No,
like to
please,
answer?
Jason,
Sorry
you go
about
ahead.
that. Okay. Yeah, so there's quite a bit that happens in there. And actually, I have to first clarify one thing with the staircases. That's entirely my fault. I sent the wrong files out. I was doing something I should not be doing, getting involved with that. So we have coordinated that, and we just have to provide you with that. The stairs will be going right there where those two doors are. We're combining those into one landing, and then we've got a stair there. We're about 6 feet away from where the fire department connection is, but we'll definitely move that. It is different on the inside. There is a lower area on the inside. So we're going to keep it all at the main level that's there, which is why if you look around the back of the building, you see there's a raised landing there. Actually, you can see it in your view right there. Exactly. That's actually the finished floor. But on the other side, there's electrical and other items there. So that's all going to be adjusted internally. And that's why we have those stairs. But it's only going to be a few risers, but it won't interfere with any of the utilities that are there.
So is there going to actually be a void space then?
No,
I
it's
haven't
actually
I
just,
haven't been
yeah,
back
so
before.
there's honestly there's about a 4 foot, when you enter the building in those doors, it's 4 feet at the grade that you see, and then there's
Right.
stairs that go up inside. So we're just
Okay.
converting those outside.
Okay. And then this was a presumed a loading dock at some time. The plan that we have shows another staircase kind of right in this area. So
That's
not
correct. And the one
using-
leader right there is going to go through the landing. So the leader is going to stay right where it is, drop down into, it's actually not going to change at all. It's just, that's where a landing is going to be. And it's between two exit doors.
okay, so you're not going to have a loading dock back here anymore then?
No, no, the loading area is still going to stay where it is. You see the overhead door back there? That's there.
Yeah.
There's still going to be loading, but not for a tractor trailer at that point to come back up into that space.
Okay, because that looks like a tight. Because this is, okay, so you have, I should have opened this in PDF. I don't know how, that just was a tight distance to get anything in there to unload. Like nothing's gonna be able to back up to that ramp.
No, exactly. And that's not, in fact, I mean, it's not really for unloading. We're going to have it as van access. That's really all we're anticipating.
Okay, so then there's a potential then the van's gonna be pointing perpendicular to the building?
There's a
Like
potential
you're
of
a
that.
really
yes.
good parallel parker, I think, so.
It's
so
a
we're
potential of that. Yes, that's right.
So I have a couple more concerns back here. Once this staircase gets added in on this corner here.
Yep.
That, I don't know, have you been to the site and driven back here?
Yes. Yep.
That's a tight turn. So how far are you gonna come out to where the loading dock is here?
No, it is only 6 feet off the building.
Okay,
So it's,
So
it's
what-
further. It's not as far as the loading dock extends.
so what's the width then from the curb line to what that staircase is gonna be?
It will be no closer than what's there right now with the existing dock, but I see what you're saying, because your question is as it curls around the corner of that building, right, as we get tighter.
It gets narrower
that's-
down, so it's much wider where the loading dock is than it is on that corner of the building.
Right, so that corner of the building, we don't have any stairs that are going to come out there. They will not exceed this yellow line right here. So the closest stair that we have
Well,
is
this one right here.
actually- I'm missing the screen, sorry.
Yeah, but I don't know what happened there.
Oh, it didn't come up?
Uh,
Hold on. Oh, I see what I did. I'm sharing just a particular window, sorry. That's my fault. You're playing there now?
Not yet.
Oh,
I'll jump in second while you're pulling up the plans, Chris.
There you
I know one of our comments had to do with the discrepancies between the site plan and the floor plan. So the site plan actually shows that third staircase rear of the wall on the corner of the building opposite it. So just underneath the number 7. So is that what you're proposing, Jason, is basically 3 stairwells on the east or the west side and then 2 on the north?
It being the north of the page?
Yes, north of the page. Yep.
Yes, north of the page. So west of the page, we're proposing 1 stairwell. You see where there's the 2? We're just going to combine a landing get those doors close together. That's what we've got. And to the center section there. So we have okay, those stairs do not extend straight out. And that was an inconsistency, or I actually sent the wrong file out.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. So you see that goes straight out at that point.
Right, but
you're
I'm
concerned
worried
about
about the curve here, the turn radius as you come in here,
right.
like what?
So that's what I mean. That stair right there actually is no longer existing. That door shifted all the way to the right.
Okay,
And we were able to then combine the landing with the egress that goes out for the main entry or the main egress there. We were trying to combine the landings, limit the stairs, and that's what we did along the backside there.
okay. All right. Hold on. And then, sorry, my computer decided it wanted to have a case of the Mondays. So the other question is right now, actually the fire department connection for this building is right here. Between between, so that's what the fire department is looking to get moved. Because you get some snow and stuff in there, no one's really gonna be able to get to that.
Need a skinny guy. So we will move that.
Okay, because your sprinkler room's here, so if you can move it somewhere like over
So
here.
yeah, we did not receive anything from them. I don't know if they've provided anything in writing, but we will absolutely comply with that.
Okay, do you just want them to mark it on the plan where to put it, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's easiest. We'd like to keep it as close to the sprinkler room as possible, of course, but that's not, we will be able to make that work as long as we can get it to drain.
Okay, yeah, so when we get the updated plans from you that has the correct layout of the stairs, I'll give it to them to have them mark it.
Sounds good.
Can you also clarify, Jason, is there another connection on the other side of the building where the other stairwells are proposed?
There is. So if you look, it's right at, if you don't mind,
Yep, hold
Mr.
on.
Chairman, going around.
Yeah, there's a sprinkler room over here too, I believe, in this corner,
That's
right?
right there, right. Yeah, that's the one. So when we combined those stairs, it pulled away from that
Okay.
wall. So we got about 6 feet there. So I think they should be happy about that.
Okay, yeah. It's the other one that was really the concern. Like you said, you have to have a skinny guy in order to.
Yeah.
Get it
there. The other thing was the roof screening. So if you look at our, if you do have our plans, the elevations, which are sheet A300. We actually have a 7'3" parapet at the center of this building. That's the height of it, which is really unusually large. So we have a definite. That's where our sign is, and then the main parapet on either side is 3 feet high. So that's why you don't see anything there now. Even all those units that'll be going down the building, not only from grade, but we have 7 feet to play with. So that's why. I mean, we're good with the condition, but that's just something to note why those will be screened.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns from the board as far as the layout, stairs, or anything like that for Natalie or this part of the application?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
there's no designated parking area for the truck. My thing is with those stairs coming out, if the van pulls in front of the stairs, can another van get by or a truck? How does that work? I thought it'd be a ramp to, there's many boutiques gonna be in this building. And I guess there's gonna be more deliveries than the other businesses. So my concern is if you have more than one van, where do they pull up? And the second question is, there's several loading docks. I don't see any label outside with many boutiques. How do they know where to pull up?
So the loading is actually still done at that dock. It's still done at that one dock that's there. We actually have less retail space than what was existing. So I'm not so sure that we'll have more deliveries than normal. However, I do understand the concern. So we have about 22 feet between that dock and the stair. We have the ability to shift them even potentially a little bit more, maybe about 2 or 3 feet, but it really is only set up for one truck at a time to be able to use that.
Yeah, so if a second truck pulls up, where are they gonna stay? I mean, that's my only question.
So we're not trying to change any loading from what was previously there for retail to what's current. We're just giving egress stairs out. That's really all we're trying to do.
And you do have like on-grade loading, not just elevated loading, right? Just curious.
No.
So there's
No.
no ramps or anything.
I mean, just from the front of the building, but we don't want to load from the front.
And going off of the stair comment, are you proposing like bollards or some sort of in front of the landings of the egress so that if
Yes.
the truck, okay, yeah.
Yes. I'll have to protect that.
I gotta tell you, I am really worried about if you draw a straight line from this loading dock to that we get down to as little as 12, 13 feet in here. And then you take some snow. I don't know, Natalie or Phil, what do you guys think?
I think that it would be appropriate to have the applicant revise the plans to show the layout as they're suggesting. And then I don't remember, Jason, earlier on in the application, did you provide turning movements for this to demonstrate access of vehicles around the stairs and others?
I don't know, Dennis, if we did for this.
I
We
know.
did not because it was the original, there was no changes to the
the
actual site
Right.
itself, but we can provide turning radiuses once we have those.
Yeah, and I think it should show access to the loading dock that you're proposing, but also, a larger truck passing the restrictive areas like Chris is suggesting at the corner of the building.
We can do that. The one thing I will say, one thing we discussed internally, and I'm confident we can agree on with ownership, we can remove actually 2 of the stairs towards the back. It was more for convenience in that case, but if you were to bring up our plan, basically we just technically need the one stair that comes out the center hallway. So essentially, as long as we get that in, then we're basically covered from a life safety and code perspective. So I don't know if we could pull that up, or you want me to share the screen?
Oh, it's coming. Hold on. So, you know what?
No worries.
I'm gonna let you share because
Sounds
I
good.
had.
Share it here.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we go. Just bear with me 1 second. So hopefully you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So this is really our life safety stair. So that's what we need. So one thing that we had discussed internally originally was having access, like instead of a door here that could go into this shared dock, this could come out in this direction. This could come in this direction. It's fully sprinklered, so the distances still work. So we technically could remove this stair here and this one as well. Keep this, which has our area of rescue. And actually what that would do is, if you picture this is, again, that dock area, essentially that's there. And actually this can come a bit tighter to the wall as well. So I'd recommend maybe we do that, and that could address the comment here at the corner and also what's there. And we'll revise the drawings to reflect that. And then this is where these two sort of came together and we had one stair out in this location.
How does the board feel if they were to do that? Was to consolidate as the
I
staircase?
think that seems like a better idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Okay, so you're just a note for your next submission then.
Yep.
Um, Any other questions from the board for Natalie on this right now?
Nope.
Okay. Let's go to Phil.
Okay, before I get into my report, Jason and Dennis, when you do the turning tracks and you revise that drawing, put a few more dimensions on there so we can really see that area, especially the pinch point that Chris is talking about. And one of my comments, so we prepared a letter dated December 10th, and there's really 3 items in there. We reviewed the submission by Kimley Horn from John Canning and in general agreement with the traffic and parking information he provided. One of our comments is relative to the deliveries and the type of deliveries. I think we do want to see a little bit more on that, because with the multiple shops in there, you may have more smaller deliveries, more van deliveries here. I think the removal of some of those stairs will help because it'll give us an extra area for a van to pull off and not block that aisle. But maybe just take a look at it again, and I think it can work. But clearly, when you have more stores, you're going to have more deliveries, and maybe they're smaller deliveries. They're not there for the same duration, but I think removing the stairs will help provide a little bit more area in there, and I think some more information on that would be helpful. And the other item in Mr. Canning's memo, we had asked for a traffic analysis of Center Drive and with all the activities going on with the more related to the supermarket, the Woodbury Fresh Market. So it's our understanding that analysis will be forthcoming. I don't think this particular conversion is going to change traffic drastically. We agree with his conclusion there, but I think once we have that other analysis, that would be helpful in terms of the whole center. So I think those were really the key items, the number of deliveries and to clean up that area, which you've already, that was one of our questions we were going to have, is whether or not you could get rid of one of the stairs there. So.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody from the board have questions for Phil? No?
Nope.
All right. All right, so I'll go out to, this is that we are scheduled for a public hearing, so if the board doesn't have any other questions right now, I will go out to the public for comments on this project. All right, so I'm gonna, anybody that has comments for the Woodbury shops in Woodbury Center, please unmute yourself, state your name, and provide your feedback to the board. You see, this is the only awkward thing about Zoom meetings.
You can't tell if they're here for this.
Right. Okay, second call for public comment on Woodbury shops in Woodbury Center. Last call, if you are here to give input for Woodbury shops in Woodbury Center, this is your last call for your input. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
Second by DeLuca. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so you guys have a little bit of homework. We can see the finish line there. We're getting there. We're close. Rick, we can, with the planting bed, we can't waive that, but it's
You
already.
can consider it pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
It
we
may
need to
well
make-
have been that way prior to that particular provision in the code, I believe.
Do we need to make a motion on that, or?
No, it's just not before you. They're not proposing to change anything to that facade, and therefore they're not adjusting it, so you wouldn't require them to put in any landscape buffer, as the building has already been constructed without one, and presumably that was before the landscape requirement was in.
Okay, so we don't have to take any actual action on that.
No. But there is, a bit of a haze between here and the finish line.
Yeah, I said close. I didn't say we're there. Go ahead.
I'm just talking about the moratorium.
Well, that too. I know we can't take final action until the moratorium is listed, but we can get the application ready to go to that point.
Yes.
So you have some homework to do anyway, and another resubmittal, and then we'll take it from there. Do you have any questions or feedback for this board?
I did have one question. I know Jason had asked before, did we get any formal comments from the fire department or from anyone on this application?
We can have the fire department pen you a letter that they'd like the fire department connection moved, if that's what you would prefer.
Okay, was that, I just want to know if that was their only comment or if they had other.
That was their only comment on the application. And police had no feedback, and Natalie will just recirculate it to the ambulance corps and just double check with them. Okay.
Will do.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
I guess just one final comment or question. When it comes to traffic, I'm not sure how long the other applications are going to take to go through their process and everything else. If we get to that point where, we're set, where we say, okay, everything else is resolved, will we then, of course, we have the moratorium, so that's a separate item, but will we then be required to then wait till they've finished all their applications? Or do you think at that point, Phil, that we'll be understanding where we're at traffic wise and able to at least take action on one if those are not resolved yet?
Yeah, my feeling based on what John submitted already, that would be, as long as that analysis is forthcoming, based on his projections for this space, I don't think it's going to change anything relative to that analysis. So, my bigger concerns were just with the number of deliveries and, those issues.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Excellent. Those are all the questions we have. Thank you. Appreciate everyone's time.
Rick, anything else?
I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, thank you very much for your team's time tonight.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
You too, take care. Next item on the agenda, Woodbury Commons RMU, review proposed amended site plan and special permit for an increase in size in the previously approved retail merchandising units from 50 square feet to 100 square feet within the Woodbury Commons Shopping Center. Said property is located at Route 32 in Central Valley and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps, Section 225, Block 1, Lot 70.2, and Section 226, Block 1, Lot 1. Okay, I think, yes, I saw Bill. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
All right. As customary, just a real quick overview of what you guys are here for tonight, and then we will get into it.
We're here for a discussion about the RMUs, which are the retail merchandising units, as we call them. They're more of a temporary cart or temporary element that's on site. Back in the 80s, when the center was started, they were very small carts. They sold little trinkets and New York State stuff and Statues of Liberty, and but over time things have evolved as the center has grown, and they've started to sell more and more things. There are some currently that have food like ice cream, pretzels, things like that. The idea here is to allow these carts to go from what was originally 50 square feet maximum up to 100 square feet. We don't think that all 25 would end up being that size, but that there is some needs for some larger units to be placed. Most of the RMUs are outside of the ESO pass, and they always are. They are movable. They are seasonal. They're typically only there summer, early, late spring into the fall. Maybe they'll last till Christmas, and then after that, they're usually gone. If there are carts, which we own a lot of them and rent them, they're kind of a traditional cart. But now we're finding that the vendors are starting to become kind of brand specific, and that's what we're trying to also accommodate is their use of more of a branding type of scenario. So that's generally it, to increase them, not change the number that we have, and just let these carts get a little bit bigger.
Thank you, sir. Natalie, you want to go ahead?
Sure, I think Bill did a great job of kind of explaining what their intention is and the reasoning behind it. As you know, there's a lot of history with RMUs and kiosks and food trucks at Woodbury Common and the various approvals over the years. We tried to summarize some of that for you in our memo. More specifically, I wanted to just kind of point the board's attention to the 2001 approval for RMUs, in which at that time the board found it appropriate to clearly define a retail merchandising unit versus a kiosk, and just kind of give some specificity to the two for distinction. Some of that definition, I think, becomes very relevant here, as far as, whether or not the structures are really movable if they become larger. Are they lockable, and are there shutters or doors for it? Also, kiosks specifically were permitted to have sales within, where retail merchandising units had sales around the outside. So some of those things I think the applicant should clarify for you so that you can kind of decide whether or not increasing the size of these structures actually tips it more towards the classification of a kiosk versus an RMU. And with that being said, the other big issue here is GLA. Currently, RMUs aren't counted towards your tally, but kiosks are. So if they become larger, then should they be considered part of GLA? So those are some questions that we have. Also, in that 2001 approval, there was a requirement that where RMUs were placed, there would be a 12.5-foot clear aisle on either side of the RMU, unless it was up against a building wall, then it would be 12.5 feet from the face of it. Typically, a requirement is 20 feet clear passage for ESOs, but in this case, since RMUs are movable and could be moved in the event of an emergency, a lesser restriction was applied. So once you look at the larger structures, can we still maintain those distances? I think that's something that the applicant needs to address on the site plan, and not just for, say, the 25 spaces where they're located, but the 44 where they could be. And then that would be something that needed to be fleshed out further down the line. Another comment we had about ARB, at first glance, I didn't really consider ARB for this, but the 2001 resolution was pretty specific about what structures were approved for ARB. So we think that this would amend that approval based on the requirement or the request for branding at this time. We've recommended that the application be referred to the ESOs as is typical, but also recommend the building department and the building inspector be solicited for comments on this application. Bill mentioned the sales of food, specifically ice creams and pretzels and things like that. At the time of the approval, food was permitted like prepackaged, like nuts in bags and chips and things like that. So if there needs to be any amendment as part of this approval, if you decide to proceed, we think that should be discussed. The other comment we had was about RMUs and storage. According to that approval, there were designated areas for RMU storage when they weren't in use. So we've asked the applicant to confirm if they were increased in size, if there would still be space in those storage locations for these units. And then I think the rest of our comments, we expect, Bill will submit a response to, unless there's any questions by the board and that you think requires discussion. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Natalie. Is there like a typical do you guys, Bill, do you have an idea what a typical kiosk would look like in your mind?
Well, we submitted as part of the package, there was kind of a typical kiosk that we have throughout our platform. It's grown to about 6 by 8. We do have some that are 8 by 10. They come kind of generically, they have fold out roofs. All of these are on wheels. They are all portable, and even the vendor ones are portable. And again, as I said, they're not going to be on site they might be on site 9 months of the year. They're not there 12 months of the year because during the winter they just are impractical to use during, snowstorms and everything else. And to Natalie's point, there is enough storage on site for the ones that we currently own, and will continue to own. We've always had enough storage to actually store 40 of them on site. But the vendor specific ones, they would probably go off site during the non-use months. But I think in the package, we kind of gave a generic type of kiosk that we typically use.
Yeah, I can see the argument for saying the typical RMUs are movable, right? Probably an extension cord plugged into an outlet and you can push them out of the way. But the vendor concept ones, how are those? I can't see somebody pushing that out of the way if it needs to be.
They are on wheels and they can be pushed out of the way. And what they are is where all the RMUs are placed on site, there's a vault, and that vault has electricity and data only. There's no water, no sewer. So these things are all portable. They're all self-contained. And even the larger ones, they actually, the picture of the larger one I sent, it can actually push part of the unit into itself. To kind of compress it down to a smaller unit, but it's on wheels, and it basically we can unplug it and just push it out of the way.
Can I ask a question of Bill?
Sure.
I mean, in your mind, is there a limit as to how large an RMU can be as long as it's on wheels?
I wouldn't think that we'd ever see anything over 100. I mean, we've pushed it to 80 square feet on some other centers where we've done our own. Once you get into some of the bigger units, I think, then that's why we went to kiosks, and the kiosks have foundations, they have structure. These things have to survive wind loading. Even if they're portable, they have to be able to be tied down, or they have to be pushed out of sight. We have some facilities throughout the country where if we know we're going to get winds over 50 or 60 miles an hour, they actually have to take them apart, take them down, and get them out of the center of the courtyards because they won't survive.
But the board here has to also be concerned with the nomenclature of kiosk versus RMUs with respect to the GLA
Right.
limits, which
Yep.
are very substantial and significant here as to the GLA limits. I think it's something that the board should try to wrestle with rather than just a generalized description of RMUs versus kiosks, but also include within that description a maximum size, so that you can't have. I mean, right now, although Bill is saying that they don't see it above 100 square feet, there's really nothing that, from the way Bill describes it, that it couldn't be 200 square feet as long as it was on wheels and you could move it.
And Rick, I would agree with that. I think we would look at them being limited to 100 square feet, and that's kind of why we asked for the increase in size. We would limit it to 100 square feet. They are portable, and I think the major distinction between them and a kiosk, the kiosks have foundations and are permanently attached. They have full building permits. They are not movable at all, and that was why we went to the kiosk concept. Those are things that we know we can't move and we are not portable, and these are seasonal, and again, they are not going to be here 12 months a year, so they have to be movable so we can get them out of there.
Right.
I have a question.
Yeah. Well, hold on a second, Jonathan. I'm really having and I don't know why. I know why. I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around considering some of these 100 square foot units portable. I mean, if they've got to be moved, I can't picture a 17-year-old kid working in a vendor cart, disconnecting everything, folding it together and pushing it out of the way so something can get through. I mean, anything is movable, right? I can move a Ford Pinto if I had enough guys. I
Right,
mean,
but you
so
can't- and to your point, with the existing RMUs we have, you can't move them either with a 17-year-old kid. We
Okay.
actually we hook them up to a Bobcat or to a small tractor or even a truck, and we pull them out of the way. Can you
Okay.
push them physically? Yes, you can push them physically. Are you going to move them 100 feet? No, you're not going to move them 100 feet.
well, that circles. I think that ties back to Natalie's comment about making sure the ESO, the clearances, when you go to this larger size, are still going to fit because
Right.
you just said you need a Bobcat. So if an ambulance or a fire truck's got to get through, someone's got to run to the maintenance yard, grab a Bobcat, drive it through the commons, and push the thing out of the way.
Right. And for the larger units, one of my comments to Natalie would be, I think what would happen with the larger units, we would have to maintain the 20-foot clearance because even the fire department probably couldn't push them out of the way very easily. And I think we would maintain the 20-foot clearance on the larger units if they went over 50 square feet. So
They
that
could
we
crash through them pretty easily, though. I bet.
I mean, if the fire department can't move them easily, listen, anything can be considered movable.
The current RMUs are not that easy to move either. And again, they would have to really get behind them to push them.
Right, but the arm those are small. We're going from 50 to 100.
Yeah, you double the size.
Next year, are you going to come back and say, we can go from 100 to 150, 150 to 200? When do we?
It almost seems like an end around game to increase the GLA.
Well, again, it's not a permanent structure, so I would argue the point that it's not GLA because it's not affixed to the ground and it's not permanent. And we've gone through the GLA concept, pretty heavily over the last several years to make sure that kiosk count, anything that has a foundation and isn't portable is GLA. Whether it's
but I would argue that something that has to be moved by a machine would be considered considered semi-permanent.
Again, can you push these out of the way? Can you push them a few feet out of the way? Yes, you can. To haul them off.
You can move a whole house. You can move a whole house.
So again, the concept of the RMUs wasn't that they're easily movable; it's that they are movable.
Do the planning board members think that a site visit where you were looking at some existing RMUs, the larger ones that exist, as well as the kiosk, to try to help you make the distinctions between the two?
Well, I've been down there. I get an idea what they're talking. I don't know if everybody else has gone down there recently to look at what's there.
I have a bigger picture question to ask. I'm looking at the last page of the submittal, and there's something called Mango Verde, which is sort of a juice bar, and it looks bigger than 100 square feet to me, but I guess it's not on a foundation, and it looks like it's one of those things that could be moved. And you submitted it, as an RMU example. Mm-hmm. And my question is, why is there even a distinction between kiosks and these RMUs? And what difference does it make from a planning perspective, whether they can be moved or not? Isn't the whole GLA concept based on the square footage of selling areas? And if you're still selling juice, whether it moves or not, and if you had 10 juice stands that could move and 10 juice stands that were stationary, you'd have the same number of customers. So I'm not really understanding why we're having such a long discussion over whether things can move or not, because isn't it the retail activity that we're trying to wrap our arms around with a limitation on of GLA?
I think the difference in distinction is the RMUs really are there as an amenity. They're not there. People are not flocking to Woodbury Commons to come shop at an RMU. Okay, they're there, it's an amenity. And I think when the center first started back in the 80s, they were a small amenity because the center was 200,000 square feet or 250,000. It's now close to 1 million square feet. And we have, tons of people all over the place that need to either get small little trinkets that they're not going to sell inside of a store, or maybe now it's becoming more juice and pretzels and ice cream and stuff like that. It's more an amenity that's not harbored with inside of fixed square footage. And if you count them as GLA, then they go away 3 months of the year. Then what happens? It's like they're portable. They may be there this year and not next year. The buildings never go away, and they're always going to be counted as GLA as long as they're occupied. So I make
but on the other hand, you could have a building that's not occupied as part of GLA, whether it's rented out or not.
right.
So
but we
whether it's here for 9 months out of the year or all 12 months.
But again,
It's
the
still-
RMUs
it's still
are
GLA.
really, they're
But-
an amenity. Their sole purpose isn't there to be a rental facility. The sole purpose of them is to provide a customer amenity.
But if you remove a kiosk,
Mhm.
you'd ask us to say, remove that GLA.
GLA.
But if you remove an RMU, it's
Right.
like, oh, nothing happened. Or if you add an RMU, nothing happened. But if you add a kiosk, oh my, we have to measure it for GLA.
Right. But we're not,
But it doesn't matter that one is movable and one isn't. They're both a thing that sells. And I think your point that people don't come to the mall to get something from a cart, they also don't come to the mall
Exactly.
to get something from a kiosk.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't go to Woodbury Common to buy juice. Obviously, if I'm thirsty and I'm already there, I'll buy juice. But I'll buy it from either a kiosk or an RMU. And when I make that decision to buy juice, when I'm already there, I'm not going to base it on whether the thing can move or not.
right. But the thing is, the RMU, we're then able to move them around to where the customers may have a greater need for that amenity. Whereas a kiosk or any other fixed GLA, we can't move it around. We can't put it somewhere else. We can't pick the kiosk up and put it somewhere else without having to rebuild it completely. So if I like one day, we decide that the juice isn't being, it's not most effective in one spot, I can move it to another spot because I already have it approved. I don't have to go through this whole approval process again.
Right,
So
so you're gonna move
but
move a bigger portable unit into a more congested area because that's where the
again,
traffic is. I mean, we're getting to the point is how much stuff can we put in where we're gonna get.
Yeah,
to the
how
point
much stuff
where-
do you fit in?
How much stuff can we have down there? How much
Yeah.
can we stretch this? How much?
To
can we
me,
get- how
to
much-
me, it's just it's an end run to increase GLA.
Yeah,
It's all the same,
I
in
look
my
at this.
opinion.
I look at this, Tommy. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
It's just a way to get around
Yep.
your GLA down there now.
But the purpose of GLA
Never been
is
counted.
to regulate the intensity of development so that you don't have to reopen seeker.
Mhm.
So
But
I think it'd be more useful to focus the discussion on that, which is why do we have GLA?
Because you're going to bring more demand or use more demand out of a site. So by making something bigger, you're going to potentially have more demand. You're going to go from kiosks that are selling personalized ornaments to these potential pop-up, I don't want to say pop, but these movable food carts that are now preparing hot dogs, pretzels, gyros, whatever it's going to be. So you're going to be using more resources. You're going to potentially have more people congregating in an area, more water, more sewer. I think it all ties in. It's you're going from something really small to something bigger, and then I don't. To me, this is no different than a store that doesn't have a 4 walls around it at this point.
To me,
It's got
they're just playing, the letter of the law game.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
again,
the kiosk, I think
the RMUs have never been counted as GLA, so now all of a sudden we're going to count them as GLA.
because you're asking to double the size and what they're going to
Exactly.
use.
Right. So again, is there a size that would be more amenable to everybody to say, okay, 50 square feet isn't practical? What's a practical size? You know, if you don't think 100 square feet is 75 square feet okay? You know, again,
Well, I think the purpose originally of them were for the small push cart type ice stand, hot dog stand, things like that. Now you're looking to more retail space.
Yeah, just if I could make a quick comment. It's Dave Mistretta from Woodbury Common, but you know, some of the kiosks, I mean, some people do come to the center for the kiosks themselves. We have, you know, Invicta, which is watches. We have Piercing Pagoda. Certainly people come for that. Liz is in a kiosk. I mean, people come to the property for kiosks. The carts are certainly ancillary. They have always been a full 20-foot clear around the property. I don't think we've ever had a cart that has been less than that. And I know you've mentioned 12 and a half feet. I wasn't even aware of that, quite honestly. I think they've always been 20 feet clear. And I think part of the reason why they, especially the food uses, the carts have gotten a little bit bigger is because the health requirements over time have gotten a little more stringent in having, you know, 3 sinks and some water and things like that. None of them are connected to water. None of them are connected to sewer. But they still do need to have those 3 compartment sinks and things like that they didn't used to have at one time, or the requirements didn't require that at one time. So I think, again, that's just a little bit more background on, again, some of the kiosks and some of the carts. And the majority of the carts, you know, we're talking about a very small amount that we're talking about, but even as a company right now, when we have the RMU carts, again, they're a little bit larger than the 5x5. They're, you know, whatever, I think Bill said 8x6 or 8x8, which again are still very small, and there's you know, they're far out of the fire lane, you know, and some of the ones like the, you know, the Macaroon Cafe and some of the other ones that have existed, you know, we certainly always had met with the building department and to make sure that, you know, they had no issue, and their biggest issue always was that it was not in the fire lane, and we always made sure that that was the case, which included the full 20-foot distancing.
If the Mango Verde juice bar is not connected to water, how do you supply the water to it? Are there tanks that get filled by a hose in the morning, or how does it work?
They fill it with water daily. There is a small commissary that we have on property where they can, you know, get water or clean their stuff out or whatever. But they would supply water on that on a daily basis. And again,
But if there's sinks, the 3 sinks you mentioned, the washing of sinks, is the water pressurized in the tanks so they can wash? Or
I mean, I don't know what that means, but you know, they have a small, you know, water compartment area, and they have a small sink area, whatever, you know, I don't know specifically what they had, but what I can tell you is that it meets the current health department codes. Whether it's a 3 compartment or 1 compartment, I don't know what that is, but I know that has consistently gotten more stringent over time. And certainly we want to comply with all health department requirements.
Dave, can you clarify when you're speaking about the sinks, you're talking about kiosks and not RMUs that they are as they are approved today?
I'm talking about the carts. So like, again, I don't know that Mangrove Verde has a cart, but has a sink, but I think they probably have some small area where they have to, you know, wash something. And again, it's all part of the cart, but again, the carts are on wheels, they're movable, they leave it, you know, they're already gone and they're going off property. The Macaroon Cafe is still existing, that's in place. That's, you know, but they're all, you know, they're significantly smaller than what the kiosks are.
but okay.
Evan, Rich, anything?
Yeah, someone made a suggestion about, I like to see is there currently on site an RMU that's 75 feet? Or are they on-site smaller?
The macaroon cafe that we have right now, I don't have exactly what their square footage is on me right now, but that certainly would probably be the largest one that we have that's currently, on site.
And how big do you think it is? Approximately?
Again, I probably, again, I could measure it tomorrow, but 60 or 70 square feet probably.
And you're asking for about a 30% increase to 100.
I mean,
So I'm just saying, if we go take a look at it, that's my, I
Well,
like,
if it's an RMU, should it only be 50 square feet right now?
I just put this up.
There are a few on site that the building department has allowed to exist that are over 50 square feet.
yeah, I mean, the one that's shown right now is not on site anymore. That was over 50 square feet. And that, we certainly worked closely with the building department, making sure that these were allowed to be on property before they were installed.
Yeah, and I think that one, Dave, was 80 at the most.
Right.
Mango Verde.
Yeah, I just wanted to put something up for discussion purposes, so we weren't just imagining things. We could kind of look at something that is actually there.
Would you mind scrolling up? It's like, I think the image right above. So these are essentially the proposed, like, or typical RMUs, but yeah, I would, I'm definitely leaning to agree that these are, where they're not, they're essentially partitions, and the way that they're grouped here, they're very much, I guess, yeah, you can move them, like you said, they're movable, but they're very much, there is a fine line, and it seems like they are very, like a permanent runaround to GLA, like Tom.
Yeah, 100%.
These
The
are our
reason
typical.
why they
these
needed
are
to
our-
be movable is just that they're seasonal, right? So they're not for fire. You don't move them for a fire situation. They're already out of any of the fire lane or EM or ambulance or whatever, those paths. So it's really just so that at the end of the season they leave, which they never, they don't stay year round here.
The image you had above that one for the typical RMU carts, those are 6x8. That's a typical standard that we use throughout all of our centers. It's a 6x8. We do have a couple on some other centers that are now 8x10, but that's not usually the typical. This is more of our typical 6x8, which is under 50 square feet. And
Yeah, I'd say that the mango is probably double that at
Then
least.
this one's 80 square feet, correct?
that one is probably
mango.
about 75 or 80 square feet. Yes. But
And
it has a component in the back that's movable. That's not, I think it's like more of a cart that's not attached completely to the unit. So it's like a two-piece. But again, I
so
think
then actually, you're already pushing the 50 square foot limit with what the building department has allowed with an 80 square foot one. Correct.
Again, there are 5 or 6 on site that are over 50 square feet, and they do serve food. Yeah, and I think the other thing that's important is that, we're not trying to change the number that we're allowed to have, 25, and I don't think there's ever going to be more than a handful that would ever exceed 75. It's just not, the way these things work. But again, if there's some restrictions that we have to have a limit of, so many that are, over 75 or maybe the max is 75 or 80 square feet, again, we're here for a discussion. We're trying to accommodate kind of a need that's throughout the center.
Yeah, but what it seems, what happens is originally it was 50 square feet, and then we made accommodations for a couple to be 75 square feet. Now we're looking to set the norm at 100 square feet, and then what? Another 2 years, a couple more than 125 square feet.
Well, in 2 years, you could tell us no.
Well, I mean, we can tell you no right now.
Tell you no
because
too, right now.
Right, again, that's the
I'm
whole-
getting the
that's
general
the-
consensus from the board is that they're not, the
No.
board doesn't seem like they're in favor of making these things any bigger than they are
Nope,
today,
not at all.
especially now that you've openly admitted that you already have ones that are bigger than. they're supposed to
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, and.
But you could,
really-
you could put 10 more if you proved you had enough GLA for it. I mean, like anything else at the center. I think you need to tie your request to why it won't have any additional impacts to your seeker approval. Because that's the whole reason why we track GLA.
Okay, but go ahead, Rick. Sorry, I know you were gonna start to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that simply because an RMU was allowed to go above what was approved, doesn't mean that you have any rights to it. I just want to make that clear. The building inspector does not have any right to allow something larger than what was approved or in different locations than what was approved. So although that may have happened, it also is subject to enforcement at any time to restrict them to the 50 feet, which is actually what should happen.
I don't disagree.
I just didn't, and the only reason I say it, Bill, is that I don't want it to be considered by others as well, that, you know, as long as they get as long as they're permitted to have something in violation, that somehow vests some rights in them, and it doesn't,
Right.
as you know.
I think that the whole reason it happened was, I think, because Dave has had a good relationship, and, you know, we've gone in and in a few instances, you know, some of the needs have changed and they got a little bit bigger. And I think everybody was comfortable with the fact that it really wasn't impacting anything. It wasn't in anybody's way. It didn't impact the fire department, you know, so I think they just didn't.
That's all
Right.
fine, and I
Right.
don't doubt
And
that at all.
I fully agree.
It's just that it,
doesn't.
I
set
don't
a
think it was
precedent.
brought before the planning board to make sure they were okay, and they are the approving board.
Now,
Yeah,
Rick,
just-
Rick, what you just said was they would have had to gotten planning board approval to relocate these?
I'd have to look at the approval, but what I'm hearing, and I never looked at the approval for this particular thing, and I don't recall it, is that there was a limitation of 50 square feet for the RMUs.
Yep,
And
but as
if
far as
so,
location,
well, I'm just talking about size right now.
okay.
If there was a restriction on location, that would also fall into the same categories, that they can only do what they have approvals for, and the building department can't allow them with any rights to do it. Now, they could allow them by not enforcing it, but that doesn't mean that the village won't come back at some point in time with respect to this or any other application as to them doing something, even with the building department's approval. That doesn't give any rights to things that are not approved by the planning board.
And just so you know where this came about is, again, we've always worked closely on anything that's not a cart, like one of our standard carts, with the building department before we have the vendor either build it or bring it in, which we did with this current vendor, which is Hebrew National. And the building department was fine with them bringing it in. And when it came time to do it, Gary had left the building department, and that's when this became an issue. At the same time, this local person had gone out and spent a significant amount of money on this cart. So that's where this application.
Yeah, see, okay, because I'm reading the original planning board approval on this too, and there's a thing in here that RMUs are prohibited from preparation of food. They're only allowed packaged food only. I think there's a lot right now that the board has to wrap their head around. Unless the board disagrees with me here, I think there's a lot of moving pieces here that we as a board need to think about. I think Rick's idea of at least going out and looking at, I believe you said it was Macaroon Cafe. That is one of the larger ones that's still there. What section of the commons is that in?
It's near the Adidas, Lululemon, that section there.
Okay.
If you know where Adidas is. And just so you know, again, we have 25 carts approved. We're not looking for 25 at 100 square feet. We're looking at like 5 at 100 square feet. Up to 100 square feet.
I think Dave, and I think the best probably next step here is we've digested a lot tonight. I think there's still a lot more to digest with this application, and there's some questions from our consultants you need to answer. I think it's best to the members go out to the commons, take a look at this, the Macaroon Cafe, get an idea of what it looks like, size wise, and then, you know, what it potentially could look like up to 30% bigger. See what you feel about it. And then, do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you want to limit the number of them? Do you not want to limit the number of them? But I think seeing would be believing here. And I think that would be good for the board to do, to continue this conversation. How does the board, is that sound?
I
does the
agree with
board-
that.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree.
Yeah, what do you think, Rick? I think that's a good next step here, given the concerns and comments that have come up tonight.
Yeah, I think the big issue here is that the determination of RMUs, they have a permission for a certain amount at this point in time of a certain size. And that wasn't determined by something in the code. That was determined by something by this planning board, wrapped up in seeker, but also part of site plan issues as well. And I think that this board certainly has the ability to modify that. It may or may not trigger something in seeker depending upon how you do it. But clearly you have the approval power to adjust this. And I think that the board should go out, look at it, figure out these issues. Natalie brought up some very good point, as did Jonathan, with respect to the issues involved with respect to movability, but also what you do there, what you sell there. You know, the concept that was approved at that time, as Phil has, you know, very openly stated, is that it was different back then when this was approved. Even as when 2001, when the board's resolution discussed these issues. And so, you know, if it makes sense to adjust that and you think that it doesn't in a way that isn't going to trigger seeker, that's something that you have the power to do. But I think you ought to do it based upon what Chris is saying, is sort of a knowledge of what they are and what the impact will be. And I think a site visit will help that a lot.
All right. So does everybody agree that should be I think it's the board's next step here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jonathan, do you have any other, I know, Natalie, you were finished? Sorry, we got down the road, the wormhole a little bit, so.
I've said enough already.
you went
I'm
down
all
the
set.
rabbit hole.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I need to repeat. I would just be repeating what I said earlier.
Okay, so I think the applicant, you should answer some of the, answer the questions that the consultants have proposed to you. This
Will do.
board will go out and they'll do a site visit. They'll take a look at the Macaroon place, and they'll get a feel and a concept for what they look like, what they could potentially look like. And I think the next time we get together, we'll be in a better position to see how we want to move forward on this application.
Yeah, and just to know that the plan you have does locate where the RMUs can be, and generally, as far as I know, that plan is adhered to.
The one that's towards the back of the packet you submitted, right?
Correct. That
Okay,
has the 44 approved locations, and it allows us to move the 25 to any of those 44 locations.
well, it's something to look at while I'm snacking on my macaroons and walking around.
There you go.
All right. Any other questions or concerns tonight? All right, thank you very much, sir. We'll hear
Thank you.
from you soon.
All right, take care.
Next item on the agenda, Woodbury Heights, review and discuss revised site plan submitted for proposed 13-lot subdivision. Said property is located on Hill Avenue in Highland Mills and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 204, Block 1, Lot 34.2. All right, I see two. Who's here with the applicant this evening? Good evening, John. How are you?
Hey, how are you this evening?
All right, as we've been doing tonight, if you could just do a little bit of a 500-foot overview of the project, what we're here for tonight, and then we'll go from there.
We're not really here looking for that much. Basically, we've put together the set of plans reflecting the 13 lots. We have had them reviewed by your consultant. I'm in receipt of your consultant's comments, which is mostly what we were looking for in terms of specific things we have to address. I don't see any really big significant issues with what was brought up by Ms. Barber. And that's where we are.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Natalie, you want to go ahead?
Yes. So similar to the last application, there's a lot of history with the Woodview Heights subdivision. Currently, the proposal is for a 13-lot subdivision, and based on an action taken by the ZBA in circa 2019, the lot layouts are set and the lot areas. However, what's relevant for your review are the impacts based on the site plan. The applicant should submit a freshwater wetlands permit. And also the easements that will be required for the various utilities and access and maintenance. This is before you for preliminary approval because the prior approval lapsed. We did have some specific comments on the utilities and the road infrastructure at the last appearance before you. The applicant advised there would not be an HOA. So the alternate for an HOA would be the understanding or, assumption that the utilities and the road were going to be dedicated to the municipality. That's something that needs to be addressed on the plan, and the applicant should be aware of the requirements associated with that. We had some technical comments on the water and the sewer and the drainage. On a high level, the water main connections to the existing infrastructure will require a revision based on changes to the municipal infrastructure occurring around 2016. The sanitary sewer design, we've asked for some additional details and clarification on the design. A detailed SWIP was prepared, and we actually submitted comments late last year on that document itself. We did want to bring up one thing that's relevant to how that's prepared and sort of the considerations for the board moving forward for these. The applicant does not want to decide on A or B or sizes of homes at this time. So we think it would be appropriate for the SWIP to consider the sites as if they were going to be built out at maximum coverage permitted by the code, unless the applicant chooses to limit the size of the homes. And what this does is it accounts for stormwater management for all future development, including whether or not somebody eventually proposes an addition on their home. As long as it's complying with the coverage permitted by the code, then those facilities should be able to manage that. So that's something that was brought up in this memo and that the applicant should address. We've had some comments about grading and how the road ties into the lots, as well as some high-level grading showing construction of the homes and what would be required for that. There were some discrepancies among the SWIP plans and the subdivision plans that were filed, and the grading and retaining wall around the stormwater management area. Ridge preservation review is required for this application. And then the last thing that we wanted to raise has to do with the water quality protection overlay. Saltzman Lake, that is south of this application, is a regulated water body under that overlay district. And it's not clear right now whether or not the wetland shown at the southern end of the property where the stormwater management facility is, if that's connected to that. So that's something that the applicant should provide in a future submission. Unless the board has any questions, again, I think this is something where we had some more detailed comments and expect that the applicant, as John has already said, could respond to in a revised submission.
Anybody have comments for Natalie from the board?
Yeah, this is Rich. I happen to live on Dartmouth, which is adjacent to Hill. And Natalie's comments about the south end and the wetlands and Saltzman Lake, I mean, that's a recreational lake for the homeowners. They fish. And there's a clearly defined stream that comes from the 13 lot through the wetlands into the stream. So, it's not clear to me about the retaining wall and the number of trees they're going to cut down there, but we're concerned about the drainage and the stream coming into the pond and the wetlands there. So is that going to be further defined going forward?
We'll have to further define it in terms of evaluating how it's connected. We'll certainly confirm. I believe it is connected, but we will confirm that. And
on a
we'll
rainy
make sure
day,
that the SWIP accommodates.
Yeah,
preserving water quality.
there is a path that walks around Saltzman Lake. And you could clearly see the stream coming down from the 13 lot, especially on a rainy day. So it's quite obvious.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Jonathan, before I get to you, Rick, with this, as far as the lot sizes and layout, our hands are kind of tied here, right? Because of the decision from the court and the ZBA here.
Yeah, the
So,
ZBA decision still holds, even though the preliminary approval lapsed. So in a sense, this is a new application for you. Seeker has to begin anew. There should be a FEAF Part 1 filed, and you will have to go through seeker with respect to this. But the ZBA provisions as to the size of lots, et cetera, that all remains the same. They have rights, vested rights in that decision.
right, so what I'm getting at is we couldn't ask for lot changes or redesign of the lot or anything like that, correct? Because of those two decisions?
But it depends upon the applicant. I mean, the applicant can say, I have these rights that are vested for certain lot sizes, but I'll waive them if I get something else on this application that I would like that you may not otherwise like. So it's not like it's so carved in granite that it cannot change from that. It can change from that, but with respect to the rights given to the applicant as to the variance, they have rights to that. Unless they want to waive or modify them.
Okay, I just wanted to help set the board's expectation of what can and can't be done here.
That's right. You can't force anything different than what the ZBA has provided with respect to those issues.
Okay, thank you for that, Rick. Okay, does the board have any questions right now for Natalie? I think I asked that already. Okay, Jonathan, you want to go ahead?
Sure, you have a memorandum from NPV dated December 10th. And in our first comment, we went over some of the history has been gone over already. On our comment on the stage of the application, we were deferring to Rick, and he just said that essentially this is a new application because the old applications have expired, but the variance, of course, runs with the land. The third comment was about the lot layout, the issues just discussed. When we looked at the subdivision, it seems though there are some other issues that haven't been discussed yet tonight that aren't covered by the variance or the court decision. And one of those is sidewalks. We noted that on Jefferson and Fillmore, there are some sidewalks. And this particular plan doesn't have any sidewalks proposed. So I guess that's a question for the planning board. If you felt that there was a need for the subdivision to have sidewalks, I don't think there'd be anything precluding you from asking the applicant for that if you think there's utility in extending sidewalks into the development. But if not, you could entertain a waiver if they request it. The finished grading, Natalie had mentioned that we don't have finished contours for the insides of the lots. One of the board members was mentioning tree clearing. We noted that there's no limits of clearing or large trees marked that are being removed. There needs to be a tree removal plan, and street trees indicated we always require street trees to be planted. Lighting is not shown. Once again, we don't know if there'd be any interest in the board of having street lighting or whether you don't want street lighting, but we just noted that none's been proposed, so it hasn't been discussed yet. The plans don't have monumentation details showing how monuments are going to be set at corners. Natalie talked about drainage. We note that hydrant locations were added to the plans. And on ridge protection, if the idea is to market this subdivision with outhouses to be pre-designed Natalie was saying the SWIP would need to imagine a full build out. There should be some notes on the plan so that buyers of the lots are aware that whatever house design they come up with for their lot will be subject to ridge protection and ARB review. I think that should be put on the plan so that buyers realize that before they go into it. And that's my report.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for bringing up the sidewalks and the lighting. I think we should get there in a second. With ARB, I think, isn't this going to be like a case that if, you know, they just sell the lot of kind of the first house in, the first house design is really going to set this trend for the neighborhood anyway? Or then if they don't do with an ARB approval now, every lot's going to have to come in to get approved. I mean, that's what's good.
I don't really know what the developer has in mind with respect to that. At this point, I will discuss it with him in terms of what his options would be. If he wants to try and come up with a range of potential dwellings at this point, or if he doesn't have that in mind.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rick.
Just saying, you're absolutely right, Chris, with respect to what would happen. If there's no ARB, each property has to come before you for an ARB. And that poses some problems generally for each of the applicants. They buy it thinking they can build anything, but it may determine that they can't. That's why it's normally better if the applicant in a subdivision comes up with a multitude of models that will kind of define this area. And as long as the planning board permits those, then people coming in have an idea as to the types of homes that could be built and aren't surprised later on that they can't build what they want, thinking that they had carte blanche when they don't.
That's why I wanted to bring it up. So it's in the record that we talked about it. So this isn't a surprise if this is how your applicant wants, and that's fine if your applicant wants to move forward like this, but it's also going to slow down the building process as well, because every house is going to have to be reviewed as it comes in. So just proceed. I guess it's kind of like a proceed at your own risk there. Just being honest and letting you know there.
I understand what you're outlining is the process. And I'll make sure that my client is aware of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
As far as sidewalks, I think the last subdivision we had in front of this, we requested they put sidewalks in that neighborhood. I think it's actually David's subdivision. So I'm of the feeling that being that those neighborhoods over there do have sidewalks, that we do request sidewalks be put in. I'm just looking at the changing demographics of Woodbury. We have a lot of people that walk, and I think we should provide a safe passageway for them to walk. The same thing with street lighting. There should be some minimum street lighting so nobody's walking in the dark, and I think it's a pedestrian safety issue. But that's my take on it. How's the board feel?
I agree with that 100%.
I agree as well.
Evan, the same thing?
I agree.
Okay. So we're gonna want to see sidewalks and that on the plan.
And the street trees go along with that. So when you lay out your sidewalks, you should leave a place for those.
Okay. I know the fire department looked at the hydrants. I spoke to the chief and he's okay with the layout on those. And then again, ridge protection would be addressed on a case-by-case basis as the applicants came in, because there's no ARB here. Any other comments, concerns, or feedback we want to provide this applicant before they change anything?
So
The one thing that I would like to add, following up on the issue of ARB. If there's no ARB, I will be suggesting that there be plan notes added to the subdivision plan, clearly setting forth that there has been no ARB approval for this, and that every buyer who comes in must appear before the planning board to obtain ARB approval and ridge preservation approval at their cost. So that when it's included in a plan note, then it's considered to be that the the new buyers are put on notice legally with respect to that particular requirement. And so you won't get disgruntled people. Well, you still may get some disgruntled people, but you've done everything you can legally to notify subsequent purchasers of these lots of this requirement.
Well, Rick, is that onus put on the builder? Or on the village?
Well, what happens is that if nothing is said, then the people can say, well, you know, it doesn't give me any requirements for A or B, therefore I should be able to build whatever I want. And the problem with it is not so much legal in that sense, because the code will prevail. But the fact of the matter is that you have very disgruntled residents who have already purchased the property with this unknown surprise wrapped inside of it. The developer should obviously, in my opinion, as should real estate people,
Disclose
go
that.
ahead and advise them of this issue, but that rarely happens. They go ahead and sell the lot and the buyer is left to their own resources. And that way, if this is included prominently in a note, they're at least legally put on notice, and a title company may come up and pick up that note in their review and put it in the title report.
Evan, you had something, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that. So all the plots, are they already conforming to the minimum lot area with the added, I guess it's throughout the history of the project, with the added codes that calculate slope and wetland areas? So essentially, do all the plots already meet the minimum lot area inclusive of all those new requirements?
No, they do not.
Yeah,
But they have variances.
the listing of the lots that don't, they're covered by the variances. The variances are all very specific, lot by lot. This lot can be this many feet under the minimum lot size. This lot next to it is also below the minimum lot size and can go this many feet under the minimum lot size. So the variance essentially took care of those lots. That's why in our memos we were saying that this lot pattern is essentially fixed. And Rick raised the possibility that maybe there could be some swapping, but you know that it isn't entirely fixed. But I would guess that as this moves forward, they're going to go with this lot plan because they've got a lot plan that's gone through court and ZBA and can be approved, and then they'd work on the remaining issues with us.
But they do have to check for if it's in the water protection overshed, right, Rick? That would still apply here if any of the lots are in there.
They still have to apply. I mean, the size of the lots are as dictated by the decision. However, because the approval lapsed, well, because there was never an approved subdivision that was filed, they are subject to all of the code provisions up to the present time.
So if they're going to propose a house that's in a watershed protection buffer, they'll have to go through the watershed protection buffer process to show that they can't locate the house on a better part of the lot that's farther away and so forth.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right, but next time they have a submittal, they should show where if the watershed protection overlay falls into any of these lots, correct? Okay, which
yes,
sorry, long way to get where I was going. Does the board have any other comments or feedback to provide this applicant? Okay, John, you're good with where you got to go next?
I do understand where we have to go with things next. I'd appreciate it if the planner's comments could be forwarded to me at your convenience. Other than that,
sure. I think I emailed them to Mr. Morrow, but I can send those to you right now.
Okay.
All right.
I do have a question. I think that it's probably to Rick. I just want to check on the status of seeker back before we went to the zoning board of appeals. Prior to going to the zoning board of appeals, this was a coordinated review under seeker. And the board, prior to our getting a decision from the ZBA, changed the seeker process from a coordinated review to an uncoordinated review to allow the ZBA to render its decision based on its own seeker determination. So right now, I don't know if the status of the seeker process is still uncoordinated, Rick, or whether the board has to take any action to make it a coordinated review with other outside agencies that are now involved.
I think because the approval lapsed and now there is no approval, so it's like a new application. If in fact the ZBA was still involved in the picture, then I think we would have to go forward with an uncoordinated review. However, I think it's appropriate to go forward with a coordinated review, just not including the ZBA as an involved agency.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't get through a couple meetings and then figure out that we had to do something, so.
No, I
That's
think you
good.
should submit the full EAF Part 1. The board will look at that. And once they receive that at the next meeting, they will go ahead and type the action. And they will set a notice of intent to be lead agency, because I assume you need some other approvals from other governmental agencies. And then once we don't get any objections, the board would assume lead agency and would go forward.
Mr. Locke, if you could just quickly say your email.
Certainly, it's john.locke@afrgroup.net.
Okay, you got it. Thank
you
you.
very much.
Anything else, Jay, or are you good?
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, sir. We'll look forward to your next submission then.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Friedman, review and discuss revised site plan and special permit for proposed conversion of an existing 1,000 square foot addition of a single family home to be used as a place of worship. Said property is located 32 Blueberry Lane in Highland Mills and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map Section 217, Block 2, Lot 4.2. Mr. Fusco, I believe this is you, right?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. I'm representing the applicant. Thank you very much.
All right. You just want to bring us up to speed? It's been a while since you've been in front of us.
Yes, we had received comments, and I believe back in October, we had developed additional information that we forwarded to yourselves for review. One of the things that I think that we had required is that we needed to up our escrow, and that took a little bit longer, so we weren't able to make the November meeting. But we are at this point, I believe, getting fairly close to the point that we possibly could get a public hearing. We have accommodated most of the comments. I did receive the new comments. I see we still have a few lingering comments that we can adjust accordingly. We have identified one of the issues that was an easement that was on the adjoining property, and both property owners have agreed to a settlement which has been submitted to the board. We have handled the parking situation, I believe, because we did provide 8 spaces. We have 6 banked spaces that we believe would be sufficient if the building inspector requires it, due to the nature of the shul being mainly a neighborhood shul where people will be walking to the shul more than driving. So we have asked for a waiver of that. We asked for a waiver of some of the bulk requirements as well. And we also did investigation of the sanitary system with a dye test, and we believe we demonstrated adequate capacity. We did calculations of the flows for both the shul, the Mifka, and as well as the residential homes. We are not doing any exterior work other than some landscaping. So I believe We don't need any architectural review. And that's basically it. We can go over the comments of the planner and the engineer, and we'd be happy to accommodate any changes that are required.
Thank you for that. I think before we get into the planner and the engineer, I think one of the big things that are still hanging out there with this application is those requirements that you're asking to be waived. We still have yet to get a narrative that demonstrates substantial burden, proof of substantial burden on why those requirements, whether it's parking or bulk requirements, or can or should be waived. And that's the onus for that is on you and your applicant to say why this board should be waiving those, not just because we can. I know, Rick, I'm not putting it as eloquently as you would, but this board still needs that letter from your applicant or from you stating why waiving those or not waiving those would be a hindrance on practicing your religion at this location.
You said it absolutely appropriately, Chris. The thing is, though, they have submitted 2 letters, but it does not appear to me, it's going to be a planning board decision, but it does not appear to me that those letters demonstrated that it was a substantial burden. It demonstrated there were some inconveniences, but it did not demonstrate that there was a substantial burden on the exercise of religion. So the planning board, once again, is willing to accept a new narrative that will persuade the planning board that you want the waivers for the lot area, width, coverage, and front yard setback, because each of those places a substantial burden on the exercise of the religion.
I'm a little confused on that because if we can't have the waiver of the bulks, we can't have it. Are we to, buy more land, relocate the house? What are your suggestions in that regard? I'm a little confused with that.
But they cannot even consider the waiver unless you have just demonstrated that it is a substantial burden on the exercise of the religion. And the way I read it, and the planning board may read it differently, but the way I read it is that hasn't even come close to it based upon the 2 narratives that were submitted. So it's your obligation in order to get a waiver to present that. If you don't, an insufficient narrative is the same as no narrative, and just asking the planning board to waive it just because it happens to do with religion, but that's not the standard. You also can go to the ZBA and ask for variance under the area variances under the ordinary standards. But to get a waiver from this board, you have to demonstrate that having those restrictions, and without that waiver, it would place a substantial burden on the exercise of your religion.
Okay, I will.
I mean, there have been numerous requests to this board with respect to waivers. And when the applicants have finally got around to having a serious narrative asking for that, to my knowledge, I don't think this board has ever denied a waiver. They have granted it in the past. But each of those demonstrated that it was, because of the particular features, it would be a substantial burden on the exercise of their religion.
Okay, I will make another attempt and, possibly get some advice from the rabbi in his regards as well to try.
And the planning board, that's right, the planning board welcomes that. They want to go ahead and consider the waiver requests, but they need to do so based upon a compelling narrative that there is this substantial burden.
I understand. Thank you.
I just wanted to get that part out of the way because that is kind of the big linchpin that's holding up this application from moving forward.
The other thing too is that it is subject to the moratorium.
Well, that I always how do I keep forgetting about that tonight? I'm gonna put a sticky note on my screen, so I keep stopping.
Moratorium.
Right.
What did I say?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a sticky note. I get it.
Yeah. All right. So that's all right. It's getting late. Natalie, you wanna go ahead? I'm sorry.
Sure, thank you. I just want to note the most recent submission addresses a lot of our minor technical comments. We did have a couple of things left that require resolution associated with acceptable water quantity and also the septic tank sizing, as well as potential input from your traffic consultant who opined on this application previously. Right now, we question the parking layout, and also I think a request for a waiver for 2 spaces is required still, where 16 are required, but 14 with 6 land bank spaces are proposed. The applicant submitted demonstration that the water quality is acceptable. However, the narrative describes a test at a hose bib that they were able to achieve 5 GPM. But there's some additional details required for that test. How long was it conducted? It seems like it could be artificially high if there's a tank installed in the home, which typically there is. So we'd like to know a little bit more about the interior plumbing of the space. If the applicant has a well completion report, that should be provided. It would be really helpful for this, and it should be provided or should be available to the homeowner, ideally. So details on the test, and I think then we can kind of get to there and agree that there may be acceptable quantity available at the well. With
What do you-
respect, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. With the quality,
Yes, the quality was acceptable. You provided those test results and everything came back under the MCL. With one note, I think that we commented on in our memo with people with high sodium diets should be aware, of restricted sodium diet. So that could be provided to the homeowner is how we phrased it in our memo. With respect to the size of the septic tank, the DOH has certain requirements based on the number of bedrooms in a home, and the DEC has a method of determining the size of the septic tank that should be required. For a 3-bedroom home, the DOH says the minimum should be 1,000 gallons, which is what is currently installed at the home, or on the site, I should say. However, we think with the addition of the shoal, that's an obvious increase of needed capacity, as well as the DEC requirements would put the tank sizing up to 1250. So although the engineer has performed a dye test, which we had questions about how much dye was used, although the volume of water used was sufficient to tax the system, it's questionable, would you observe the dye if not enough dye was used in the test? But also with regard to that, the tank material is concrete. So, if it was plastic, there might be concerns, has it deteriorated over time? So we've asked the engineer to kind of clarify that septic tank report or the septic test report to provide some of those details that were observed at the time of the test. And also, if the planning board chooses to proceed with the tank sized as it is, they should have some assurance from the applicant's engineer that it's sized sufficiently, for the application, and that should be in their report. So I think the rest of our comments are pretty minor. We've asked, for the applicant to demonstrate where curb ramps would be installed and some minor changes to details. But again, technically this is moving along.
thank you.
Okay, any questions for Natalie on her report, comments that she brought up? Jonathan?
Sure, you have a memorandum from me at NPV dated December 10th. And our first, the submissions have been responsive to many of our comments, which we appreciate. The new floor plans submitted now show exactly which rooms are going to be used for the shul use, which for the residential, with the room sizes in square feet, which is very helpful. But they're dated November 2019, which is not right. So if you could just date them so the records can be clear that these are the newest plans, not the oldest plans submitted. We also noted that the previously submitted site plan on sheet 3, you indicated the site distance for the driveway, which we had asked for, but then on this new plan, that detail was missing. So if you could transfer that detail from the old plan, that would be helpful. Natalie has gone over the water and sewer dye test. One small thing that we noted that she didn't mention yet is that on October 14th, 2021, a letter was sent to County Health Department regarding whether this well would be considered a public water supply or not. And I guess they have not answered that letter, or if they have, we haven't been shown the answer letter that may or may not have come back. Rick went over the issue of the waiver requests for burden of practice of religion. I won't go there again. On the parking waiver, Natalie went over that. 2 spaces are asked to be waived. We feel it looks like the maneuvering into the parking spaces that we were concerned about has been addressed. Our comment 11, we still question the issue that there's 2,763 square feet for the place of worship. The sanctuary designated is 1,000 square feet, which could accommodate, according to fire code, 66 worshipers at the rate of 15 square feet per seat, if you use the uniform code standards for non-fixed seating. So the applicant has consistently said they're only going to have 12 adults and 15 children at any time. And if that's the case, and all of the water usage, sewer usage, parking, all of the other considerations are based on this rather low utilization, that perhaps the board may want to consider placing a condition of approval, imposing this low maximum capacity. But we still would encourage the applicant, if there are plans to utilize this for several dozen people, which we would expect for a place of this size, that to adjust the application submittal accordingly. Those are our comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from the board have questions for Jonathan? If Mr. Fusco, if I may make a suggestion, if your applicant is friends with the gentleman, the rabbi that runs Congregation Ove Shalom, or the shul on First Avenue that were approved by this board, it may be helpful here for your applicant to reach out to see how they submitted their substantial burdens. Now, you can't take their narrative, but they may be able to give you some guidance on what they did use to prove those burdens. Just a little helpful information for you. We're not, nobody's here is trying to, hold up the application, but this is what we've done for all the shuls that have come in front of us, and and that's what we're going to do to keep going forward.
I appreciate the explanation and the advice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. All right. Does anybody or have any other questions, concerns for the applicant? Okay, Mr. Fusco, are you good with where I think you need to go to start tying up some of the loose ends here?
Very understanding of it. Could you give me some guidance on the moratorium? Is that scheduled to run out, or it might be extended or something of that nature? I haven't been following.
It is tentative. It's up for discussion in January. The Board of Trustees in January, will review where they stand as far as the conditions that they put into the moratorium, and then they'll make a decision there whether or not they're going to extend it or lift it.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
actually set to expire, I believe, in January, and that's why they're going to be discussing whether to extend it and whether to extend it on the same or different terms.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
No problem. All right, sir. Thank you for your time this evening. We look forward to your next submission.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
You too.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Eastgate Management, 300 Forest Road, ARB, review and discuss plans received for ARB and ridge preservation of a proposed addition to an existing single-family dwelling. Said property is located 300 Forest Road in Highland Mills and is known in the Village of Woodbury tax maps, section 213, block 1, lot 63. Sorry, gotta get my plans. Mr. Morrow, this is you, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Cleverly is here for this application, and Mr. Weinberger, the applicant, is also on. So I'm just briefly to bring the board up to where on some of the facts of the case. I'm not sure what the board knows about this application, but it's my understanding that some time ago, Mr. Weinberger took plans to the building department to build this addition. And at that time, the code requirement for ARB review was not in effect. And that the building department issued a building permit to Mr. Weinberger. And pursuant to the building permit, the foundation was installed, and after the foundation was put in, Mr. Weinberger decided that he wanted to change his plan. So when he went back to the building department, the code requirement for ARB review had been enacted. He was advised accordingly, and we've brought this application to review the revised plan that Mr. Weinberger looks to amend his building permit for. So at the moment, apparently there is an outstanding valid building permit, and the improvements on the property, which I think are reflected on the site plan or on the plot plan, were built pursuant to the existing building. And Brad, if I didn't get that right, you'll clarify.
You got that exactly right, Jay.
Okay, all right. So
Jay,
we're
if I
here
could ask you, because
Sure.
I don't have it right. So there was a building permit given and a foundation given before there was ARB. Then he went back, ARB came into effect, he went back and got an amended building permit with respect to the house, and then the house was built?
No, he stopped construction after the foundation was put in, and it's my understanding, I believe, and Mr. Weinberg can also clarify, but at that point, he decided that he wanted to change his plans. So he was in the process of revising his plans, went back to the building department. The building department said, listen, if you want to change your plans, there's a new law in effect that's going to require you to go to the ARB now to review those revised plans. So there is an open building permit. Construction was stopped, and we're here now to get an ARB approval for the revised plans so that he can now continue under the building permit after he submits those revised plans to the building department for review.
But the building permit was for the foundation that was previously laid, correct?
It was for the foundation that was in the original plans. That's correct.
And that building permit hasn't expired?
I asked Mr. Weinberger.
No, good evening, board. It's Isaac Weinberger speaking here. So just a short of the long, we were issued a building permit on 12/30/20 for a full completed set of site plan and plan. At that point in time, the plan we had submitted had a flat roof. We went back and we changed the elevation to make it to actually, as we're doing the addition to the existing house, we made them as an A roof. At that point in time, we submitted the revised amendment plan, and we were advised to go back to the ARB to get their approval. So the footprint didn't change, it's the elevation which changed. The foundation was installed, we got it inspected, and we passed all our inspections, and the foundation is in the ground, and we're ready to frame as soon as the board approves us. I will be clear, I will just add one thing. We did add a single car garage at the point when we did our amendment plan.
And other than the single car garage, what was the change from now that you're doing now to then? Was it, I believe it was just a windows
From
or something like that,
No,
right?
no, from a flat roof to an A-frame roof.
Okay, so you went from a flat roof to an A-frame roof.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Colors stayed the same, window colors stayed the same. It was the only change pretty much. We were kind of caught in between.
Right, I got you.
Jay,
Okay.
did this ever receive ARB approval?
No, it wasn't required at the time.
No, I mean, after the law changed and they went back and got a building permit based upon revised plans.
They got the building permit before the law was enacted.
Right. And then,
Okay.
but then they revised the plans.
We have revised plans that we're submitting to the building. We submitted, building department said they could not amend the building permit until we got
Got it.
ARB approved.
Okay. Got it now. Thank you. I'm a little
You're
slow.
welcome. You're welcome. No, you're good. I was the same way today, so.
Jonathan, you want to go ahead with yours?
Sure. Would you believe I was looking at plans and I've lost it? Okay. Excuse me. You have a memorandum dated December 9th from us. We note that the applicant has been responsive to some of our previous comments. A short EAF form has been submitted. Floor plans showing the room layouts with gross floor area and floor area of each room have been submitted. We do still need to see revised elevation plans that show the elevations of the house, a view face on showing the dividing line between the existing structure and the proposed addition. And it should be labeled with the height. That's a missing element. We also recommend that a site plan version of the site plan be shown on a separate sheet showing the existing conditions. Sheet C1 shows the existing conditions, proposed additions, and landscaping all on the same sheet, which is a bit confusing to read. And the plot plan is still missing a landscaping plan that shows what trees are to be preserved in the area of the addition and in the work area surrounding, trees to be removed, and then any proposed plantings afterwards. Also, if there's going to be any proposed lighting, those details should be added. The side yard setback, we noticed that it looks to us from the reading of the plans that the proposed addition encroaches into the north-facing side yard by approximately 7 feet. So we'd like for a hard look to be taken at that. It could be that an area variance would need to be required, or an adjustment of the placement of the addition. Other than that, the bulk requirements seem to be in order, but that's an important issue to raise. Then also the plot plan shows the driveway is overlapping with the building footprint of the addition. And if there's going to be a new driveway or a relocation of the driveway, that needs to be clarified. That's our comment 11. For ridge preservation, we agree with the conclusion that this won't be available from view corridors. The applicant has stated that, and we looked at mapping and don't believe it will be. We agree that we don't think it will be viewed from the designated view corridors. On the ridge preservation, hardy board white siding is proposed. But this is an addition to an existing home. And typically the board has allowed white in home additions, but this particular home addition looks to be almost larger than the existing house. So you may want to discuss whether the white color will be acceptable in this situation, which is a little different than some others you've reviewed. The roof material, charcoal is specified, GAF, timberline type 3D shingles are proposed. It seems to be an adequate material. As usual, the applicant should confirm that the glass will not be reflective on the windows, and a note should be added indicated that anti-reflective window film will be applied. And under architecture review, the board should review about similarity with or dissimilarity with neighboring structures, and they've submitted photographs of nearby homes that show the relationship of the project to the home surrounding it on the last sheet. So you can have a look at that and make your determination. And that's my report from December 9th.
Thank you, sir. Does the board have any questions for Jonathan? Okay. As far as the white color, I think based on where the house is, the addition, the houses that are next to it, and all the houses across the street from it are all either white or cream. If you drive through that section of the area. So in my view, I think the white is okay. And as far as the similarity and dissimilarity, they have multifamily housing across the street. They have a large house right next door and across the street to it. So there's a good mix of different housing types in that small little area. So personally, I don't think it's going to stand out in any particular way. I don't know if the rest of the board has had a chance to review the photos or maybe drive through the area and take a look to see what the typical construction types are over there.
Yeah, I would agree that the other buildings nearby also, like you said, similar colors.
So who determines, Rick, if they need the variance or not? Shouldn't the building department have done that when the application came in initially? You're on mute.
Thank you. No, it's really up to the applicant. The applicant, once it has a pending site plan application, it has the right to go to the ZBA directly and ask for a variance. However, a lot of times it doesn't help to get the variance out of context. And so it's actually pretty customary for an applicant to come before a planning board needing a variance, get the input from the board as to where they're going, which will help them in an application to get the variance. And they can indicate what has occurred in the planning board. Therefore, maybe it doesn't need any conditions on the variance and it may be able to be granted. So the building department wouldn't say, well, you can't go to the planning board, you have to go to the ZBA. It's really, this is the appropriate way to go, in my opinion.
So sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
If you take a hard look at the site plan, it's quite busy in the corner there, but there's a sort of a protrusion out of the back of the addition. And at the corner, at the back right corner, there's an arrow and it marks that it's 22.78 feet from that corner of the protrusion to the rear line. And if you use a hand scale, that looks about right but it's supposed to be 30.
Right, but what I'm getting at is that the planning board's problem, or isn't it the applicant's problem? That
Yeah,
they're gonna,
if the applicant wants to go ahead and revise the plan so it doesn't need a variance, then, that solves everything. But if they want to have the location where it is, they'll need a variance and they would have to go to the ZBA.
okay, sorry, John, Mr. Meyer, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, my only question is that, number one, I don't believe we're here for site plan approval.
No, you're
We're
right.
here-
You're right. I
We're here
misspoke.
for no, I understand that, but I think it's significant because we're only here for ARB approval, which is which is basically design. The building inspectors passed on this application, gave a building permit. The applicant built the foundation in accordance with what they submitted. It was inspected, it was passed on, and we're only here for a design feature. I think this is a little more complicated than just saying, we're here for a site plan and hey, it's quite obvious you need to go get a variance. We've acted upon a valid building permit. We built according to the plans that were approved and the permit's still active. So I'm not really sure why we have to go to the ZBA for this.
Well, I'll tell you, you're right that it's not a site plan. It's another approval, but this board cannot approve anything that is not in conformance with the code. And so if you have a house, and regardless of whether or not you got a building permit for it or you built it and you're well aware of that, is that doesn't vest any rights to vary the code. So that this board is not going to be approving the building of something that is outside of the code requirements and needs a variance.
Yeah, the only exception, one of the exceptions to that is where we've acted pursuant to a valid permit. We've expended money and improvements into the process.
You would have to demonstrate that you have vested rights under that. And I haven't seen any indication of proof that you have vested rights under common law vesting. Now, if you want to submit something and try to.
I'm not saying I have the answer, but I think it's more complicated than simply saying, I think is a relatively unique circumstance where we're here in front of you after a building permit has been issued and after construction has commenced. So that's typically not how this works. So I'm not clear, and I'm not disagreeing, Rick. I'm just saying, I think it's more of an open question, and I think maybe you and I can talk about it afterwards. But
I'm happy to talk about it, but
I can ask
with
Mr.
respect to the vested rights, the common law vested rights, where you go ahead and you expend money and the land has been modified to such an extent that the new provisions would pose a problem, or that you're vested in a valid building permit, that still has to be demonstrated by you. And I'd be happy to look at it with a narrative from you as to why you believe that it satisfies the common law vesting test.
That's as long as I've given the opportunity to make that
Absolutely.
argument, then that's fine. Okay. But I do want to ask Brad or Mr. Weinberger, what exactly is supposed to be built over that protrusion?
It's going to be a stair tower. And to be a little more for the record, the existing dwelling, as you can see in the site plan, is as well non-conforming with the setback. And before we started this addition, I happened to meet with the building inspector then and with my architect, and we laid out a couple of options. We were trying to move the house completely into the setback, and we were advised at that point, because the existing house is a non-conforming and outside the setback, we can just connect to it and continue with the addition. And that's how we were granted the building permit, and the foundation was installed and an as-built was provided for that.
Can you say
And,
again?
and I'll take it in further essence. I can start to frame tomorrow the house the way it is, because there's a building permit. All we're coming here to do is,
Can you explain, can you say again what's going to be built over that, the protrusion?
it's a two-story addition, just a partial of it, and it's gonna take you up to a single bedroom master suite. It stairs.
Portion that's built over that protrusion?
Yes, and I believe.
What is it going to be? Is it just open space? Is it a
It's
stairwell?
it's a two-story open stair going from first to second floor. I believe the plans were all submitted for the board. In front of you, you should have floor plans and elevations showing that. So that's our question. I could technically go and start to frame the house have been approved, and no one could tell me you can't. If the building permit was issued. So all we're coming is to change from a flat roof to an A roof. What do we say then?
It's not always that simply because you got a building permit, you have the right to build it if it's contrary to the code.
Well, it was issued at that time, the code was, it was issued based on code review.
Well, if you're talking about that the setback was different at that point in time, then that may be
I'm not saying
something. But
setback
if
was
the
different at that
setback
point in
wasn't.
time.
Okay, but your attorney will go ahead and present all of this in a narrative, and I'll look at it.
So Rick, what should be our next steps here? Because we're in a little bit of an unusual situation here.
Well, we should type the action as a type 2 action under seeker. The application is exempt from the moratorium. It was referred to GML on 12/13, so we haven't gotten a response back. Public hearing is required. That's what's outstanding.
Don't we have the ability to waive the public hearing under the new ARB?
I'd have to look at that again.
Yeah, you do.
Chris.
Yeah, I looked at it today. You'd have to make a finding that determination would have no apparent significant impact to the surrounding neighbors, but you do have the authority to waive under that circumstance. So
I thought we put something in there like that, but
I know we put something in there. I wasn't sure. I couldn't recall at the top of my head what it was.
Not that I don't trust you, Mr. Myro, but I have to just take Rick's advice here.
Well, we don't have to waive it tonight. You can waive it next
for
time.
it either.
What was that, Jay?
I wouldn't take my word for it either.
So Jay is almost certainly right. Jay's very good at what he does. I'd like to take a look at it. You don't have to waive it tonight. So if Jay is correct, then you can waive it at the next meeting. But you should type the action as a type 2 action under seeker. You can't do anything tonight because the GML 239 hasn't come back.
Okay. So okay, sounds good. So I'll make a motion to type this as a type 2 on the secret. Second.
I'll second that.
Tommy, any questions?
Can we get a copy of the report from the reviewer, which was issued on the 9th, please?
Yeah, Jonathan, you sent.
I sent that to Mr. Myro.
Okay.
So you could get it from him.
Perfect.
That'd probably be the easiest, or if.
I forwarded them on.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we can't do anything. So you and Jay and Rick, you're gonna talk offline about the setback issue.
Yes.
We're gonna wait till the GML 239 comes back before we can do anything. And then I guess Brad and the applicant will look over the comments from NPV.
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
We'll address those comments.
All right, and then as soon as the GML comes back, then we'll get you back on after Rick and Jay have their conversation. We'll go from there.
Can I ask one question before we go?
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the waiver provision that I think is in the code for a public hearing is new for you guys. Is that new language?
Yeah, we updated it. It was added when we updated ARB.
Okay, so you don't have any history as to what you've been doing in the past with that respect?
No, we
Yeah, I don't
actually,
think-
we
Okay.
actually requested that get added in so that one week we would have the ability.
Yeah, because what
I
I
think
looked
you're the
at,
first, Jay.
okay.
Yeah.
Of course. So, I mean, I looked at an aerial of this particular property. It looks like it's really heavily wooded. Doesn't look like it's visual. Is that like a circumstance that you guys were, considering when you said maybe we should have a waiver provision here where it's just completely obvious you're just not going to have a visual impact on neighboring properties?
That was, I believe, the intention of adding a provision that based on the circumstances that are given to the board, if you, like you said, we can clearly spell out the house fits into the neighborhood, or you can't see it from a view corner, to allow us to skip that process.
Okay,
Or that piece
that's
of the-
good.
that piece of the process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, board, for your time, and have happy holidays, all of you.
You too. Take
Thank you,
care,
you
sir.
too.
Thank you, take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks a lot,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
Good
night.
night, Jay.
Good night.
They used to have an open motion.
Oh, wait, yeah. Just all in favor, all in favor for the type 2?
Aye.
Thanks, Evan. We got caught up. And hold on, last but not least, David has been waiting all night. ML and YT Inc. /ARB, review and discuss plans received for ARB and ridge preservation of a proposed single-family dwelling located on Lot 8 within the Timber Trail subdivision. Said property is located at 8 Hall, whatever. I can't say it tonight. I'm getting tired. Road. And is the and then is the Village of Woodbury tax map, section 237, block 2, lot 12. All right, your turn.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here to present for an ARB review. This project, as was mentioned, is a Timber Trail subdivision. The owner has put in the infrastructure and constructed one house. That's Lot 8. It's the first lot on your right as you enter the subdivision. Without question, the house was built according to the plans. It's been inspected by the building department. It meets all the criterion regarding the zoning and building codes to date. It's framed, sheathed, and the interior is also framed, and with plumbing and electrical. It has not been finished. The owner would like to amend the ARB decisions or decision that was made for these houses back in 2015. This application right now is just for the one house, and he would like to make the following revisions, just to, again, just add a little bit more detail to the farmhouse kind of look that was approved back in 2015. So in 2015, House A was this type of look. It's a brown option. It has vertical and horizontal siding, roofing that could be either brown or gray or a few different colors. The windows are white, but basically it's a hardy plank, vertical and horizontal siding on all 4 sides. What we would like to do is just modify that farmhouse look by adding a stucco finish to the front with synthetic wood surrounding the windows in the front, as mentioned, as you can see in the rendering, and also add a stone veneer, which is actually a marble material, believe it or not, that would be gray in color along the 2 post bases and then the back facade. Again, the bulking of the house has not changed. The design, the 3-dimensional design of the house has not changed. We just would like to change the materials and the color. We're proposing a white stucco as outlined in our materials list, vinyl siding to match on the other 4 sides, and the synthetic wood detail feature around the front windows. And again, that marble or cultured stone on the post base and in the back elevation. That is everything. That, you know, and again, it's specific to this house, to this lot. And we would request that the board entertain this and allow us to go ahead with this design.
All right, thank you. Jonathan?
You have a memorandum from us at NPV dated December 9th. I guess my first submission comment was about what was previously approved. And I guess these elevations weren't labeled, but perhaps you had already done that. You showed one that was already. Could you just display again which was already approved?
Yeah, back in 2015, there were 2 house options that had been approved in concept or in preliminary design. It was this style, like this, and this was another style.
Okay, I guess it would be helpful for you to submit what was previously approved as part of this file, and you could label it, you know, approved in 2015, just so that we could all look together at what was approved and what's new. Because I did that the previous approval elevation was included in my packet. I don't know if it was in anyone else's. My second comment, if you could just provide us with some photographs of nearby homes showing what they look like, and you know, otherwise, because the house is in existence and it's really just a color scheme, the board can discuss whether I know that in ridge preservation you have earth tone requirements and want to shy away from white, but in this case it's called intense white, which is obviously very white, but perhaps by looking at the surrounding homes you can see if that would be appropriate.
Did we get a copy of the memo?
Boy, everybody's asking me that. I believe I sent one. I sent one to you, David, and then I was having problems with your email that I sent you a second one. And the second one that I sent you did not get returned to me. So, but anyway, I'll send it to you again. I sent it to you at nimatko@frontiernet.net.
No.
And before that, I sent it to you at david@nimatkoarchitects.com, which is on your letterhead, but that got returned.
The first one, I don't know about. The second one is true. That should not have been returned.
Yeah, well, when I clicked on your letterhead, that I got a hyperlink to a FrontierNet email. Anyway, I tried both of those. How would you like me to send it? And I'll do that right now.
The second email, actually, I got my phone. So David at Nimatko, NIEMOTKO, architects with an S.com.
nimatkoarchitects.com. Okay.
So,
Sent it again.
well, I know it's a new subdivision, and it's the first house in the subdivision. It is a subdivision within the Timber Trail subdivision, so it's a subdivision. I guess you call it that. I think the board is pretty familiar with what Timber Trail looks like.
Yep.
How does the board feel? I mean, we know what Timber Trail looks like. We know what the applicant wants to do.
I don't really have a problem with it at all.
Thank you.
No, I don't have a problem either.
I'll be the odd man out and say it matches absolutely nothing in the development up there. Timber Trail is all wood, dark wood, painted red wood. And this is an ultra modern house in a wooded development, but that's why there's 4 of us, 4 or 5. So I don't know if we, Rick, goes back to the whole, do we need a public hearing on this?
You're muted.
Muted, Rick.
Thank you. I pulled it up, and yes, you have the ability to waive, and it's based upon the following standard. Upon a determination by the ARB that there is no apparent significant impact to the surrounding neighbors or neighborhood, given the mass and/or architectural features of the proposed project, and that a public hearing is not necessary in the public interest.
So it sounds
So
like in
it's a
this case,
standard, but it's rather flexible, obviously, if you believe that it's not going to have a significant impact to the surrounding properties.
anybody, how's the board feel? Does anybody want to make a motion to waive the public hearing?
Who's making that first motion?
I'm throwing it out there. Oh, nice try, David.
You know, we're keeping the roof is warm, you know, it's a natural color or environmentally friendly color with brown. You know, you have the wood trim on the windows, the wood features. You know, to a certain extent, we are somewhat consistent with that theme and hoping that you know, you would feel the same.
Chris, you made a comment that subdivision within a subdivision, which I need clarification what that means, but, and then you said all the other homes are dark colored wood. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
if you drive through Timber, if you go into Timber Trail, this is the area closest to 32. So you
Yeah,
go
right
in,
behind the professional building.
Yeah, it's
Right.
an 8-lot subdivision.
yeah, so this is where this home is. It's a new subdivision in there. This is single family homes as opposed to what the rest of Timber Trail is, which is I guess you call them townhouses, condos, I don't know, whatever. But they're attached. So if you continue up the road, Timber Trail, as soon as you go on the left is where your first Timber Trail housing development is, and it's wood. It's wood. It's wood on wood. I don't really know how else to describe it.
So it's
Yeah, but
past
when you go further up into the later divisions of that, they're not so much dark like that. Like,
Yeah, they're not as dark. But
yeah.
I redact my statement. I was on the wrong part of Google Maps.
But it's up to, listen, that's why there's 4. I want to ask you, I meant to ask you, because we're not a full board, does the applicant have the right to waive, wait till the full board? I know it's the ZBA, they have that right?
Well, it's not so much a right, it's really a practice, is that sometimes applicants, if they think it's going to be iffy, they may ask a board to go ahead and wait until you have a full complement. Usually that isn't the case when you have a vacancy. It's usually when there's an absence. But this board certainly, I haven't looked at the ZBA specifically for that, but this board does not have any obligation to entertain that request, but certainly it can agree and defer it if the applicant wanted to go ahead and do so.
I'm just making sure because we are a person down on the board. Okay, thank you, Rick. So we have the ability to waive the public hearing if the board wants to waive the public hearing.
If they think it will not have a significant impact on the surrounding properties.
Yes.
Yeah, again, my opinion is, I didn't know where these other homes were because I know they're adjacent to the townhouse. I didn't know there were other homes on top, I'll call it on top of the hill. And I'd like to take a look, because if you waive the public hearing, it's all about saying this house is not similar. So I don't know what the houses look like at the top of the hill that Chris is mentioning. I'd like to take a look before we say waive the public hearing.
I don't per se have a problem with the coloring. I do think we should have a public hearing.
if you're not going to approve it tonight, there's no harm done in having a public hearing in terms of delay or timing.
No, I was gonna say we could schedule the public hearing for our first meeting in January, which is the 5th.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Give me a chance to take a look at these homes you're speaking about, Chris.
Okay, and then we could close the public hearing and make a decision. We could authorize council to make a decision that night if we want to. Okay.
I'm
Is
good
that fair with the
that.
board?
Yep,
Okay,
I'm good
so
with that.
I'll make a motion to schedule the public hearing for January 5th.
Second.
Second by Tommy. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll also make a motion to type this as type 2 on this secret.
Second.
Evan, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Wow, I think David's putting an application in for the board.
We have an opening.
I consider that an honor. Thank you. One question, though, the public hearing's the 5th. We have to have the public notices out by.
The building department
now,
takes care of
right?
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the date is, David.
It's 10 days before, right?
Yeah, it's 10 days before.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Maria typically has them out the Tuesday, like next Tuesday. We'll have it set.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can you remind me of the village's policy? Are we doing are we mailing out the notices or the village does?
The village does.
Oh, all right. Fantastic.
Hey, Chris, one other clarification. On the agenda, it says 8 Halleck. On some of the memos from the consultants, it says 2 Halleck.
2 Halleck.
Two Howard Court.
Which is, it's 2.
2.
Okay, so the agenda is wrong. Okay,
Yeah, typo in the agenda.
okay.
We'll beat Natalie up. We'll beat Natalie up for that.
Mr. Chairman, did you say that you wanted to authorize me tonight to have one ready for that night? For a resolution?
Because we don't have to vote on that, but if the board decides after the public hearing they like what they see, I don't see the harm in having it ready.
I agree.
So is the board okay with it? Again, we're not
Yes.
putting ourselves into a corner. We're just, if the board agrees after the public hearing with the new design, then the applicant's not waiting another meeting.
Yeah, no, let's have it ready.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right, David, we'll see you on the 5th. Have a happy holiday and a happy new year.
Thank you. You too. And I have to say this, I'll see you next year.
Oh, you had to go there.
All right. At
You
least I
had to
got to
go
laugh
there.
at everyone. Okay. Have a good evening. Have a great holiday, everyone.
You too.
Good night,
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. I think that is all the business on the agenda for this evening, unless anybody wants to hang out for any longer of a reason. It's already.
Me.
Yeah, Rick, you would have been in bed 2 hours ago. Who you kidding? Listen, I would have been in bed 2 hours ago myself. So, all right, on that, thank you, everybody. It was a long night, but I think it was a productive night. A lot of big applications. So, thank you, everybody, for sticking with it tonight. And enjoy your holiday. Enjoy your
Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff.
Merry
everybody.
Christmas.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Enjoy.
Motion to close.
Good night.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, there you go. All in favor?
Aye.
I stuck around.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.